Hello and welcome back to Seagulls Central. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Thank you coming back to the channel. If you're new here, thanks for dropping by for the first time. And if you've been here before, I really appreciate you coming along, clicking on the video and engaging. Quick one, if you're new and you love Brighton and Hove Albion or you've seen this content before and you like it, please hit that subscribe button below. It really helps me out a lot. There's a stat, I've been banging on about it every week. I feel like people must be sick of it. I'm sorry, this is the bit people have already skipped past at this point. It was around 73% of people. It's now down to 67 or something of people who watch this channel are watching it without being subscribed. So honestly, if you could just take 2 seconds, move your mouse, hit subscribe, it would be so helpful to me and I would really appreciate it. This is the place for the best Albion content, the most regular, hopefully the most in-depth, and the best community in the Brighton space on YouTube. I really hope that you can help me build this, and I really appreciate you being a part of this channel. Listen, today I'm jumping on because Brighton are back. They're officially back. Yes, we've had the kit launch. Yes, we've had all of the transfer talk. It kind of feels like, with Brighton, it never really goes away, as I'm sure it does for most Premier League sides, as you go through social media and there's always something you can get given, always a piece of news. We've been reacting about Brighton all summer so far without really working on anything in terms of football matches, but Brighton were back and we've got a game to analyse, a game to talk about, a game to take the takeaways from. Brighton on Saturday, which is yesterday for me now as I'm recording this, beat Wycombe Wanderers 6-1 in a behind closed doors friendly at the American Express Elite Football Performance Centre in Lancing, which is obviously the training ground. Put out a mixed side, a side obviously lacking many players that we would see probably going into the start of the coming season, but we saw a lot of new players, we saw a lot of young players, we saw a lot of academy players, and to be honest, it's nice just to actually have a game to get our teeth stuck into, to be able to kind of think, God, okay, where are we? And I guess that's the kind of thing with pre-season, particularly the first ones. It's kind of like you spend the whole summer talking about, oh, this player's going to be out, this player's going to have lost this place, this player's coming in. And actually, suddenly, you got your players back and you've got decisions to make and it's looking completely different to how you expected. So, let's get into it. So, Brighton obviously played 2 11s, as that generally happens in pre-season, particularly early on in pre-season. And I'll read out both of the 11s that Brighton played. So, in the first half, Carl Rushworth was in goal, Slater at left-back, Buscaglia and Dunk at centre-half, Veltman, so that's a back four, that is, Mitoma on the left, Baleba and Milner in the middle. Milner came off after 30 minutes and Andrew Moran came on. Minte on the right, and then Jorginho was in just behind Danny Welbeck. And then in the second half, Cole Rushworth actually played the full 90 minutes, which is interesting. Eiran Cashin came on. I'm presuming this was at left back. Igor played, Webster played at centre half. Charlie Tasker played. Caelan Vickers, Mullins, Moran, Howell, Sarmiento and Buenote. So the second half, it really was a bit of a change side in terms of having a lot more young players. But I feel like we've got a lot to get into. I mean, the headline really around this game was Danny Welbeck and his 4 first half goals that he scored. I'm sure all of you have seen the highlights on YouTube that the club put out. And Danny Welbeck, God, did he look sharp, honestly. I think that's the main thing that I want to kind of say is that Danny Welbeck looks so sharp. For me, before this game, he would have been the player that I would have gone into in the first game of the season, starting him up front. And whilst we've signed Stefanos Simas, and while we've signed Charalampos Kostilas, Babis, as they call him, ultimately, neither of those players are going to be dislodging Danny Welbeck from that starting 11 anytime soon. Last season, I think we saw one of his best seasons in an Albion shirt. You could maybe say his best season in an Albion shirt, full stop. And I guess the question was, with Brighton going into next season, recruiting so heavily in the forward department, and not just in terms of attackers, but in terms of direct, out-and-out strikers, and seeming to have so many options when it comes to strikers now, how was Danny Welbeck going to fit into that? And I think, to be honest, for all of us, there was no doubt in terms of Danny Welbeck probably going into the start of the season being our number one striker. I think at this point, if you're going to pick your first choice kind of front four, it's Danny Welbeck up front, Rutter in behind him, Mitoma on the left, Minte on the right. I think we'd all agree that that's probably how we will start the season. Then it's up to the new players, up to the young players to try and take the places off those players. But we saw it with some of the goals, particularly that first goal, very early on. I think it was the third goal actually, where Rutter kind of runs into the box, dribbles past every player. The ball ricochets as he loses it, and it just drops to Danny Welbeck on the edge of the box. And first time he goes to finish it into the bottom right-hand corner. And I think that was his hat-trick goal, the third goal that we scored. And he just looked so sharp. Every action he did looked quick. You know, one thing I will say is obviously Brighton looked much, much, much the better side and quite clearly a cut above from Wycombe. You know, one of the first moves, obviously the first move we saw in the highlights was that dunk ball over to Mitoma. I think it was the second move where Dunk moves into midfield and plays the ball into Minte. And Minte on the right wing is just so much faster, so much more technical, so much more intricate than the defender he's up against. And he's able to just knock the ball past him, dribble around him, beat him for pace. The touch when he receives it from Dunk is just a killer one, which means the defender doesn't even get anywhere near him. And I think that kind of shows the extent to which we were playing against a team where the level was a little bit of a cut above. So, I mean, in that breath, you know, Danny Welbeck was brilliant, and getting 4 first half goals is excellent. What that shows is, you know, in his 18th season of professional football, he's still absolutely at the top of his game. And I'd love to know where he feels he's playing his best football. Was last season his best kind of level of football that he was playing in terms of regular playing in the Premier League and really contributing? I think you're seeing a player now who's so mature, who has different facets to his game, has a little bit of pace still, but has so much technical quality, who can hold the ball up, who's got a finishing instinct. And I'm really excited to see him next season. You know, he's going to have a lot of players breathing down his neck in terms of young players, but I think Danny Welbeck still quite clearly our best number 9 option. And I think it's one of those where, like, outside fans probably do turn their nose up a little bit when they hear about Danny Welbeck's your best striker. But I think most teams in the kind of from like 4th to 14th would absolutely love to have a Danny Welbeck as their starting striker. Absolute quality, and I think we just got to say fair play to him. Second point I think we've learned from this game is around Yankuba Minte. Hear this, mark my words. Yankuba Minte is going to be named Brighton's Player of the Season next season. I think he is going to have an absolutely fantastic breakout season. We obviously saw last season, starting the season so brilliantly away at Everton, looking brilliantly in that game, literally almost this time a year ago after we'd signed him. He looked great, obviously, in pre-season in Japan. But in this game, you really, really saw the difference in quality for him. He, to me, looked like the best player on the pitch in the highlights that we were able to watch, repeatedly running it as winger. You know, that's the one thing I love about Minte. For a young player who's so raw, he's got so much quality in the way that he can literally dribble the ball successfully and get past players every time. He can take a shot and he can finish quite often. For a young player young players are often quite raw and take a while to kind of bulk up and be able to beat players or bulk up and be able to find the finish. He's really good at that, and we saw him against proper units of, defenders in this game against Wycombe. Just absolutely breeze past them. He's not afraid to run literally at players, dribble past them. I think this season, when there's so much talk about, Mitoma, will he stay? We've lost João Pedro. Actually, Minte, I think this is his moment where he's going to step up. We've seen him have his first season in the Premier League where he's got used to kind of playing every week for the Albion, having to deal with obviously a couple of injuries along the way, having to fight for his place with different wingers that come in and out. I think we're going to see a serious breakthrough for him. The way that he, there's, particularly in that first kind of 15 minutes of the game that we saw against Wycombe, the way he was just getting in behind every single time, running at the defenders, beating players. He set up a Danny Welbeck goal where he literally just tapped it into the goal because Minte had taken every single player with him as he was dribbling past everyone. Danny Welbeck then was suddenly left with nothing to do apart from tap it in the goal because Minte had done so much of the hard yards. And I think it's so impressive. I really hope this shows kind of signs of more to come with Yankuba Minte. I think we're seeing a player who's definitely ready to kind of take things to the next level, and 20 years old as well. So exciting to see what he can do next. Thirdly, I think another thing we can take away from this game is the impact of Lewis Dunk and how critical, absolutely critical this guy still is. And I've been guilty of it. I think in these videos I've been making, talking about Buscagli coming in, talking about Coppola coming in, talking about all these options that we've got next season. I think we've all kind of spoke, even in the ChatGPT video that I did last video, if you've not watched that, go and watch that. It's hilarious. talking about, the way ChatGPT said, Lewis Dunk's going to lose his place. So we go, okay, that's not implausible. Whereas actually, I think when you think about it now, yes, we've got Coppola coming in. Looks like he could be a generational central defender. Buscagli, brilliant experience. I think Lewis Dunk's still going to have a starting place by the start of next season. And I find it interesting that maybe in this Wycombe game, we haven't seen this back three that so many people have spoken about. Is that basically because we don't have the players yet and it's literally the first game of pre-season on a boiling hot day in July? And maybe Fabian Hürzeler's kind of thinking, look, we'll get into the kind of Spain games when we've got the whole squad back with us. We've got everyone going into pre-season, and then we can start kind of doing some more kind of tactical work around how we're going to look up next season. I think maybe the fact that, Hinchell was still not here, Coppola's only just reported. There's so many players that have been on international duty that we're not able to kind of fully integrate. That this game was more about just, let's just play everyone who's fit, everyone who's available, and let's just get minutes in the tank for everyone. And I think that probably was the case. So I think that's why we didn't see the back three. But I think with the performance that we saw of Lewis Dunk playing a critical role in 2 of the goals and looking very, very good, looking like a ball player, looking like someone who was stepping into midfield. Yes, we've seen that with Lewis Dunk, but I think my kind of concern was, God, has he kind of got to the point where we're just going to have him in the middle of a back three, protected by 2 other centre halves, and he's just going to have to do the mopping up, and eventually kind of halfway through the season he'll lose his place. I think I've been proven wrong a little bit just by reminding myself, God, Lewis Dunk's, his vision, his creativity, his ability to pass the ball is still, as far as we've seen as fans, it looks unrivaled. Yes, maybe Coppola comes in and can recreate the kind of Dunk of old. Yes, maybe Buscagli's got these brilliant passing ability, but I think what we've seen in these games is the confidence that Lewis Dunk plays with, the leadership, even just the way he physically stands when he plays. He's got such a straight back. He's got his shoulders up. He looks like a player who wants to fight all the time. Passing range, still absolutely elite. And actually, when you think about the squad being trimmed, we've spoken about how Brighton have got such a big squad. Obviously, it's never going to be someone like Lewis Dunk on the receiving end of the squad being trimmed. However, I think what it highlights is actually the experience that you do need, particularly in the back line. And whilst you might be thinking, we've got so many defenders, I think probably if we're going to be thinking about trimming the squad, it's probably going to be more focused around like fringe attackers, Buenote, Sarmiento, Howell, etc., etc. There's quite a long list of players who we're going to have to kind of make decisions on, particularly some players like Sarmiento, Buenote. It's like, where do we go next with them? Even Evan Ferguson, with his move to Roma looking like it's getting wrapped up in the coming days. So I think it does still raise questions. Obviously, I quite like the fact that Buscagli and Dunk played together. And then the second half, we obviously saw Cashin, Igor and Webster. Maybe that's a bit of a sign of kind of Hürzeler's preferences. He's kind of putting the players together, which he kind of groups in terms of his rankings. Buscagli and Dunk still very much firmly part of the plans. Webster, despite looking very, very good in this Wycombe game, and I think he has a part to play for us next season. Absolutely a very important part to play next season. Maybe him alongside Igor and Cashin, maybe the players who are a little bit more at risk. And I think the second half team was maybe a little bit more of a fringe players team. You saw players like, obviously, Kellen Vickers, Sarmiento, Buonanotte, etc. Another thing I think we've learned, Buonanotte looks very good. He looks ready. Now, it's annoying because obviously I don't think we're going to see Buonanotte in a Brighton shirt next season playing in the Premier League with us. It sounds like by all reports he will be going out on loan next season to a Premier League club, to a Championship club, to get more minutes under his belt, to get him as a homegrown player, to be eligible as a homegrown player. I rate it. I understand it. I do respect that from the club. I think it's probably the right move considering we've got so many attacking options and there are more options that haven't even come back from, pre-season yet that we're going to see. And our depth is going to be pretty crazy, and Buonanotte probably isn't going to get much of a look in. However, I think there's an opportunity there, isn't there? Always in pre-season, there's 1 or 2 players who force themselves into contention. We saw it with Yasin Ayari last season to an extent. Malik Yankula, even though he ended up going out on loan. I think I'm hoping Buonanotte can be that player. I think you've seen from the pre-season videos and photos the club have released, he looks like a player. Well, look, he's 2 years older than from when we last saw him, 2.5 years since we signed him. He looks bigger, he looks bulky, he looks stockier. We saw a video of him kind of holding off a defender and finishing really nicely in training. he looks like a player who has bulked up, who has beefed up, who is maybe more equipped to play Premier League football now, more equipped to play against proper men's football in England. And we saw him obviously going up against Wycombe players who by and large are typical EFL players, and he looked very, very good the way he holds the ball. I think that was one of the problems that we all had with Buenote, was that he was a little bit lightweight in a way that maybe Gruder was in the first half of last season. And I think Buenote, he does look ready. He absolutely looks ready to play Premier League football consistently now at 20 years old, turning 21 in I think like December or something. He looks absolutely ready. The trouble is it's probably not going to be with Brighton next season, is it? You know, he's obviously still going to be on our books. I wouldn't be surprised if he signs a new contract, but I think Brighton are going to move him on for a loan next season just because of the depth that we need. But I do think from that Wycombe game, he was really one of the standout performers, dribbling so fantastic, looking brilliantly. Similarly, Caelan Vickers, I thought he was brilliant. The way he was dribbling at players, nearly created a goal for himself. Really, really impressive. So lots in terms of our young players to feel quite positive about. So then who kind of wasn't there? I think the main ones to talk about, obviously Evan Ferguson not being there. We didn't see Julio and Ciso playing either. Obviously Igor did play, but I think it probably seems like he's going to be moving on permanently in the next few weeks. Evan Ferguson, it sounds like that move to Roma is pretty much ready to go. It looks like it's going to be a straight loan, although I did see a report this afternoon that actually the club are trying to negotiate over kind of the permanent buy clause terms in the loan. I think it would be interesting. I don't know whether they'll try and price Roma out in that sense. There were reports it was going to be a straight loan. I think it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens. I don't know how I feel about the Evan Ferguson loan. I think it's one that I don't feel great about. I think only because at least with Gyökeres, like the signs weren't really there that he was going to be a top player. Whereas I think with Evan Ferguson, it really does look like he is going to be an excellent player. And if and when he inevitably kind of develops into that, and he's not a Brighton player anymore, I think it's going to be a lot harder to take because we all saw the signs. But I think if the Roma loan is a straight loan, I really like it. I love the manager at Rome. I think he's done a brilliant job of players in the past, a fantastic coach. I think he's a player who has a lot of goals to give, and actually in a European league, maybe in a different league with a bit less pressure, a lovely place to live, I'm hoping there'll be a bit less pressure on him and we can see the best of him and he can get back to playing regularly. So obviously we didn't see him in the Wycombe game, we didn't see in C, so there were other players we didn't see as well. But I think at this stage it's hard to necessarily talk about who's not playing because it's so early on. I think maybe if we're getting to the kind of Stoke game, the Las Palmas game in a few weeks' time next week, and we're still seeing players not playing, I think then we can kind of make a few more judgments on how players were looking. I thought Buscagli looked decent. Nothing crazy. Obviously, you saw him make a couple of good interceptions. We need to really see more of him. One person I do want to highlight, though, from a positive sense, is Charlie Tasker. Obviously got on the score sheet towards the end with the last goal, the sixth goal of the game. And a player who, we've seen him in a few Premier League squads in kind of like the last 6 months or so. Did we see him come on? I think I've got a vision of him coming on at the Amex, making his debut maybe. Was it against like Liverpool or Newcastle towards the end of the season? Obviously very big, strong. He's a bit of a unit. Right back, can play centre-half. Got a couple of years left on his deal. I think he might have even signed a new deal at the end of last season. And looks like a player. I think he might be a bit of a breakout player this pre-season. I think when you particularly think about the way that right-hand side maybe needs a bit of bolstering with us only really having kind of Joel Veltman as a right-back and then Jack Hinshelwood being able to play there, but maybe he's a bit more of a centre-mid. I think Charlie Tasker could have a real role to play, and he looked brilliant. The goal he scored yesterday against Wycombe reminded me of like a goal that Matty Cash scored. The way that Matty Cash can really get up into the box and score goals and finish. There was something about that felt a bit similar to that. And I like the way he's really big and the way he's really tall and the way he's strong and he's well built in terms of being a right back. And it's interesting. I think Brighton are actually building a very big side, with lots of units. Lots of the players we're bringing in are tall and strong and wide. And actually, I think for Charlie Tasker to be able to come in, absolutely take his chance at right back in this pre-season. And there is a bit of a gap there in terms of someone being able to take this opportunity at right back or at wing back in a back three. And Charlie Tasker's got a real opportunity to do that. I think he's going to be taken to Spain with the first team. We're going to see him in some more of these friendlies. And I'm going to make a prediction. I think he's going to be one of the players that we're going to see stand out in the next few weeks in pre-season. And who knows, he might play himself into the Premier League squad in the same way Jack Hinshelwood has, that he did kind of a couple of seasons ago in pre-season. Really liked his performance, have really liked the look of him in the academy, and liked him. Obviously, I think when I saw him in a cameo for the first team, it might have even been for the academy. I can't remember. I'm getting so confused. But I think he's one to keep an eye on. Obviously, Slater looking really good at left back as well. Got himself a semi-assist in the first half as well for the Danny Welbeck goal. So lots of things to kind of feel positive about. Obviously, the Lewis Dunk element. Danny Welbeck looking so strong. Buscagli looking decent. Buenote, excellent. Minte looking electric. Tasker looking fantastic at right back. Also Rushworth, I think to be fair to Rushworth, we saw some of his play, some of the balls he was playing out. Nice and clean with his movements, nice and calm as well. So obviously, his future's up in the air. Glasgow Rangers obviously interested in him. He's apparently refusing to sign a new deal. He believes he should have had more game time in the last couple of years. We'll see where that one goes. But pre-season's underway. There's a lot now for us to dig our teeth into. We've got a game midweek. I think the Stoke City game's on Wednesday or Thursday. Or is that Wednesday or Thursday next week? I can't remember. But we're going to get into that as well. The stories are developing. We're going to hopefully see some of the new signings come in. The Kuipers, will we be able to see him? Coppola, will we see him as well? Costilas, Seamas, all of the Tommy Watson. Who are we going to see? When are we going to see them? Will we get Harvey Elliott over the line? There's so much to kind of think about, and we've got a lot to get into. Thank you so much for watching this. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe to this channel and drop it a like. Get in the comments, tell me what you thought of this game. Who do you think stood out? What do you think the main takeaways were from this Wycombe game? What are you most excited to see into the next few games that we see? By the way, all the games are going to be streamed. If you're a My Albion Plus member, if you're a season ticket holder, you go online to the club website, you log yourself in, and you can watch all of the pre-season games live. I think the next one is this Wednesday. So if you want to watch them, I think you absolutely can by the sounds of it. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what you can do. So yeah, let me know what you're most looking forward to this pre-season. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you on the next one. And as always, up the Albion.